We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade speculation for the offseason. Today we're focusing on a variety of teams, including Montreal and Pittsburgh, apparently after the same defenseman. We'll discuss that defenseman currently on the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Wild and Byram Rossi and his future. Apparently the Canucks have interest there. The Canucks also linked to some players on the Buffalo Sabres, so we'll discuss how that might play itself out, plus lots of talk around the New York Rangers as well. We're getting ready to preview Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It shifts to sunrise as the Oilers and Panthers have a 1-1 series tie. We have a Jack Adams Award winner, plus some other news around the NHL. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video, starting off with a quick preview here of the Stanley Cup Final. We have a series that's tied 1-1 and now shifts to sunrise for Game 3, which will go tomorrow night. Of course, they had the weekend off, an extra day off for travel purposes here between Games 2 and 3. So now the next 3 and 4 will be, of course, in Florida on Monday and Thursday evenings, respectively. I'm not sure why they have the extra day off while they're not traveling, because then after that for Game 5, they only get the 1 day off, and then back to Edmonton, which we know is going to go at least 5 at this point. So hard to say. But of course, in Game 2, the Panthers took that game, a double overtime win. Brad Marchand, the Rat himself, scores his second of the game, including a shorthanded one earlier. He had a heck of a game for Florida to tie this series up. Of course, I thought Florida was the better team for the bulk of that game, to be honest. They almost had it in regulation. The Oilers pulled off another comeback late tying goal. This one from veteran Corey Perry with just, I think it was about 20 seconds or 18 seconds left on the clock. Pretty dramatic fashion, as they've done numerous times. Of course, the Panthers have an impeccable record when leading after 2 periods. For the first time in 30 games, they lost after leading after 2 periods in Game 1. And in Game 2, they almost did it again, but they had to go into double overtime to do it. The Oilers are making adjustments on their back end. Their D pairs look different in their skate here today. The Oilers' defense has not been good enough. Definitely the weak point of that team, and certainly the way they played in Game 2, it's a wonder that the Panthers didn't win by a wider margin. So we'll see what adjustments are made on both sides. Clearly, I know at one point the Panthers looked like defenseman Aaron Ekblad hurt his hand bad, but he says it's okay. I doubt it's okay. It's just a lot of players playing through pain and don't really want to disclose much at this point. But, the Panthers are in a tied series, and really, to be honest, if you think about it, guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov, Reinhart, they've all been pretty quiet. So if one of those guys or multiple of those guys find ways to kind of really, get ignited here, that could really be a huge boost for the Panthers. So we'll see how things go tomorrow night in Sunrise. And, of course, one other rumor that's floating around the Oilers as they obviously prepare for Game 3, according to Elliot Friedman. Lots of talk that one of the big pieces of the trade deadline they acquired, Frederic, is close to signing a contract extension to remain with the Oilers. No real rumor on exactly what the deal might look like. But of course, a lot of people are going to argue that Frederic hasn't been all that great for Edmonton. And you know what? Maybe he hasn't, but you got to remember the injury he was dealing with. Those high ankle sprains can be a real difficult thing to overcome. It takes your ankle and your everything a long time to totally feel normal again. I know that's an injury I've experienced myself, and it really is a long haul. And even though he's been playing, I'm sure next year he'll be back to normal. We've seen other players go through this after about 6-7 weeks. Sometimes they come back, and it's like they're technically able to play, but they don't have that full power. They don't have everything back to normal for an extended time. So I honestly think he's still a good player, could be a good fit. He's getting better all the time, and I can understand why they want to keep him around. Now, of course, as we know, the NHL is doing their awards a little bit differently this year. They do have a 1-hour special on June the 12th ahead of the game that night to going to go through all the awards and recap everything. There is going to be a couple of awards given out for that we wouldn't have known the winners previously, which I believe is the Hart and the Vezina. There is some leaked footage suggesting that Connor Hellebuyck may have won both awards, but we don't know that. But we do know that the Jack Adams Award winner this year was Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry. Of course, in his second year there, had phenomenal results. The Capitals really bounced back and had a massive increase in their wins and points and get to the top of the Eastern Conference, and just overall just had tremendous growth this year. Obviously, the moves that the roster seen in the offseason was helpful too, but Carberry's done a fantastic job during his time there, and certainly, I'm not surprised he won. He actually won by a fairly large margin. Of course, the 3 finalists were Scott Arniel, who was second place, Marty St. Louis of Montreal was third, and even some other coaches that were, I can't remember everybody on that list. I know Dean Evison of the Blue Jackets and Travis Green of the Senators both had a decent amount of votes, not enough to get to be a finalist, but they were like, I want to say 4th or 5th or 5th and 6th or something like that. I know there's a few others in there as well. I think Jim Montgomery, actually, during his time with the Blues, even though it wasn't a whole season, he, I think, might have been 4th, if I'm not mistaken, when I look at that ballot. So, yeah, Montgomery, Evison, Green, the next 3 after that. So, lots of great options this year for some of these awards, for sure. Now, as I mentioned, some other news around the league. Blues forward Dylan Holloway has changed agents. Of course, you remember last year in the offseason, Holloway and Broberg were the big offer sheet guys that the Blues essentially stole from the Oilers and took advantage of their situation there. Now, he's 1 year into that, so he's now eligible for an extension, and he had a massive year for the Blues. Like, what an absolute steal that turned out to be. I know, like, most of us, myself included, agreed during that time frame when the offer sheets happened that, you know what, the Blues might have overpaid here, but they got themselves a couple of really good young players who have a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to develop. And long term, I think they could be good fits and will be good acquisitions. I did not expect neither of these guys to be at the level they were just in year one. So obviously the Blues saw something that maybe not everybody else did and really get a chance for these guys to really elevate. So now Holloway's eligible for an extension. He's now going to be managed through his agency. Will change to Wasserman and Judd Moldaver. So we'll see. Obviously, I'm sure at this point the Blues will be anxious to lock him up long term as well. It's probably the same for Broberg. I would suspect that they'd be interested in doing that here as well. Now, another piece of news as well today. The Edmonton Oilers actually signed a player, even though they're in the midst of the Stanley Cup playoffs here in the finals. They signed Viljami Margela. He's a 2-year entry-level contract. He's played in Finland and Europe. He was originally a Buffalo Sabres pick back in 2021. Never signed. He's 22 years old, 6'1", 180. Seems like a decent prospect. He'll likely make the jump to play in North America and start off in Bakersfield and see if he can work his way up over time. Of course, we know the Dallas Stars fired head coach Peter DeBoer a few days ago. Lots of names are starting to emerge now on who might be candidates or who might be potential frontrunners for this job. A bunch of names to look out for, according to a lot of reporters. I know Elliot Friedman went through a lot of these on his podcast that came out after the second game of the Oilers-Panthers series the other night, so this would have been on yesterday. He says that one of the names watched internally is Neil Graham, who's done a really good job with their American Hockey League team, and he apparently has been in the mix for some other jobs, and it's one of those internal candidates that Elliott feels, and he's probably right here, that if he doesn't get an opportunity soon-ish to move up in the organization, that he probably eventually moves on and tries to find that elsewhere, or will continue applying for head coaching jobs outside of the organization. Even if Graham isn't the head coach, he wonders, could he maybe work his way onto that bench in a different capacity? That's also something to watch for. But some other names that are out there, a couple have links to the Oilers. Is like, hey, if you can't beat the Oilers in the playoffs, why not pull off a coach that might be able to help you, give you the inside scoop here? Not to say that you can slow down McDavid and Draisaitl just from a coach knowing them, but Jay Woodcroft definitely expected to be a candidate there. Of course, Woodcroft and Nil have ties from the past as well. Through the Red Wings organization, so it's not like a complete stranger to each other. But Woodcroft, of course, actually had a lot of success at Edmonton, but the standard was so high that the slow start they had created an opportunity for them to make a change there. But really, his winning percentage was quite good, and it's a matter of time before Woodcroft gets another opportunity, no doubt. And assistant coach Glenn Gulletson, who actually also has some history with Dallas. Of course, he was a head coach. Gulletson was on, I believe, 2 occasions, once with Dallas, once with Calgary. for a few years in each spot. And then after that, he's been a long-time assistant now with Edmonton, and of course gets to run, I believe he runs their power play if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, get some pretty good personnel to work with there, but obviously is, a well-respected coach, has been around the league a long time. So Woodcroft and Gulletson, along with Graham. Todd Nelson's a name to watch as well, somebody who also would have some history and connection there to Jim Nill. Gerard Gallant's name has popped up too, as somebody who may be looking to get back in the mix. Is still probably feeling like they can staying in contention here. So sometimes when they're in that mode, they feel like they need an experienced coach. So Gallant might be a guy, but I mean, Woodcroft is not a new, brand new coach either. He's been around a while, but in his time got a chance to be head coach before. Some of the other guys would be a little bit newer, but Gulletson obviously has got a ton of experience too. So I don't know. They've got some good options here that they're not necessarily, recent, long-time head coaches that have had over long jobs. Like, you're not necessarily going to see somebody like Dufour who's on job 5 or 6. It's going to probably be somebody with less experience, but there's lots out there, unless they go with Gallant, who, of course, has been around a few times here as well. Now, a bunch of other news and notes around the league, including a bunch of rumors here. Let's start with the Rangers. We got a couple of articles, one from Arthur Staple, some of the details here from Larry Brooks of the New York Post. Arthur Staple's latest and for the Rangers says that there's not too many untouchables. Chris Drury is really trying to shake up this roster. He includes Igor Shesterkin, Adam Fox, and to some degree Artemi Panarin as the untouchables. And I think the only reason Panarin's listed as an untouchable is because of the production. Ideally, I think they are concerned about his long-term future there. If he's got 1 year left on his contract, I don't know long-term if he re-signs or how that works out, but he has been one of their most productive people, so it's kind of hard to just move him along. But outside of those three, pretty much every other name is out there to some degree and are considered available. Even Panarin, I think, to be honest, for the right deal, I think Drury would consider that as well. K'Andre Miller's name, though, is getting the most attention. We know some other veterans like Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, are players that Drury seems interested in finding ways to move on from, and he's extremely motivated. Basically, is what some of the reports are saying, that he will find a way. We know how he handled things with some other veterans, like Trouba and Barclay Goodrow, for to name a couple. Now, Zibanejad, on the other hand, has full control. Kreider has some control, so I don't know how this is all going to play out, but he's definitely trying to kind of revamp things. But K'Andre Miller was brought up by Staple, also brought up by Brooks. Now, Brooks says that he feels it's inevitable that K'Andre Miller is going to be traded. So, again, we'll see if he's really that determined to make changes. And he says even if some of the trades are lateral moves, he believes that Drury is going to want to do it because basically their team chemistry and the dynamic in the dressing room was really messed up last year, and they really want to improve the culture, improve that dynamic, and get everybody back on one page to feeling like they're one big team kind of trucking in the same direction, if you will, where there was a lot of issues last year that they need to move on from. So do look for the Rangers to be extremely busy, but one of the first dominoes to fall, very well, an easier one to pull off would be K'Andre Miller. So it appears as though that his time in New York very well could be up, but we'll see where things go on that front. Lots of speculation around Marco Rossi too in Minnesota. I know some reports there are saying essentially that it feels inevitable that he's going to be traded too. Of course, Marco Rossi and the Minnesota Wild seem to have extremely different viewpoints on what his next contract should look like. It sounds like it's a combination of issues as far as term, structure, money, and I think at this point they're looking to move on and to get a new, different kind of player. The reports today on Rossi did indicate that if they need to, that it sounds like they'd be willing to take a futures-based trade, but basically with the intent that they're going to obviously be looking for another young forward, a different style of player to come in and replace him. And if they need to, it can either be a 3-team deal, or maybe they get maybe it's a first-round pick prospect, something along those lines that they get from another team, and then they flip that to a third team and bring in another player. So it could be that type of deal. At this point, there is some belief, too, that because it's so much well-known now that Rossi is almost a guarantee to be moved, that teams are going to try to take advantage of this, and the asking price might not be as high as you might think. But we'll have to wait and see on that front. Now, one team that has been linked to that player is the Vancouver Canucks. It seems like there's lots of interest there from what we're hearing from Vancouver media. Vancouver has also been linked to some Sabres players, including Bo Byram and to some degree JJ Peterka. Now, I've heard Elliotte Friedman say he's not really convinced that the Sabres want to trade Peterka, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to either. So a lot of the Peterka trade talk this offseason has really stemmed from the player not really being happy there and the agent is kind of pushing that. So it's all coming from their side of it, really. If Kevin Adams has his way, he won't trade Peterka. But, if it gets down to a point that they really put pressure on him, then he may not have a choice. Obviously, Peterka is a player that needs a contract, and if he doesn't want to sign with that team, then he will be able to gain leverage. So we'll have to see where things go. But I know the Canucks especially were linked to Rossi and Rossi and Byram. Peterka, I do think they'd have interest, but Byram, I think, would be their primary target for the blue line. Rossi for their center position, of course, so they need to increase the depth there. Now, we've seen in the past that the Sabres were kind of interested in tire kicking on Elias Pettersson. So I wonder, if there would be a bigger deal that would involve Byram and Pettersson. It definitely wouldn't be 1-for-1. There's no chance of that. But some sort of package around both of those players. I do kind of wonder how that might work out. I don't know. And I wonder if Minnesota would try to pry Peterka away from Buffalo if they feel like they're forced into it. I mean, he would be a different kind of player, but they may prefer to get a centerman back, so it's hard to say. But, yeah, I just wonder about Buffalo and Vancouver because I know, like I said, the latest links has the Canucks interested in Byram. Of course, Byram's on the West Coast. He probably would be happy there, at least I would think. So Vancouver basically trying to get Rossi and Byram if they can, but that's not going to be cheap to do. And I know even looking at some wondering if they could pry Peterka and Byram out of Buffalo in a big package deal. I was like, good luck with that. I know Pettersson is a former 100-point player and whatnot, but that would be super expensive for Vancouver to get both of those guys. I'm not sure what else they'd have to include, but it would be something that they probably wouldn't want to. I suspect they'd have to throw in at least a top young player, maybe Tom Willander. I don't know that Buffalo would want Lekaramaki or somebody like that. Maybe, I don't know. Like it would be a lot for sure. So I don't anticipate that happening, but you never know. There could be a deal involving just one of those guys. So we'll see if the Canucks get their way, but those are some players that they're targeting. And there's also a concerning report for Elliotte Friedman regarding Vegas defenseman Alex Pietrangelo. Now, of course, we know he's been, a mainstay on that Vegas blue line his whole career that he's been there. Of course, St. Louis captain, Stanley Cup champion before that. But he's had a lot of injuries and health concerns as of late. We know he missed the Four Nation tournament on his own accord. He decided to skip for health purposes, and Elliotte was wondering if he might be one of the first names named to the Olympic team. Because with the Olympic team, they have to name, I believe it's 6 players as well, and they have to do it by the end of June. Elliotte anticipates that those roster players are going to be confirmed likely sooner than that, probably around the middle of the month, so probably in the next week to 10 days. So he wondered if Pietrangelo might be one of those players, because originally he was for the Four Nations. He's one of those guys that would just be a lock if he's healthy and able to play. And he did some digging and looking around and was told, probably don't expect Pietrangelo to be one of those players. And the reason being that he may not be available. So there is some concern that if he's not available for the Olympics, is he going to be available to play next year? Elliotte was not able to find out anymore on the exact injury or health issue or whatever's going on with Petro, but it just sounds like there is some concern over his ability to play. And don't know what that's looking like next year. Even if he does play, is it going to be a reduced workload? Skipping Olympics, it may. I mean, none of this is confirmed, so kind of hard to say. But that's just some concerning news to keep an eye on for sure. Now, staying with Vegas, we know Nicholas Hag is a name that they're apparently shopping, mainly for cap purposes, cap crunch victim, if you want to call it that. And according to some reports, I know Nick Kyprios was reporting that Montreal and Pittsburgh are very, very interested in this youngerish defenseman here. He's got big size. He's played pretty well. A lot on the third pair, often paired with Whitecloud and Vegas. Pretty good defenseman. I don't really think it's a case Vegas doesn't really want to get rid of him by any means, but they have a very, very tight cap situation, as we know. They have a lot of money invested. And unless now, I do wonder, though, if seeing how they handle their cap, though, could very well be indicative of what they may or not know and have not said publicly yet about Pietrangelo's ability to play next year, too. But this is something that's ongoing now, and it sure sounds like it's a pretty high likelihood that it's going to happen between now and the draft. It may not necessarily go to those specific teams. I had heard about Hag a few days back, and there was mention about the Philadelphia Flyers being very interested, too. So I think it's fair to leave them in that equation. So Philly, Pittsburgh, Montreal, Hag would be a great addition to any of those teams. I'm sure there'll be other interests too, but certainly, like I said, with Montreal losing Savard, it wouldn't be surprising if they wanted to add somebody with a little bit more experience back there, especially someone who can be a defensive style, get some size and some shot blocking ability, that kind of stuff, since they're going to be missing that. So we'll see. There was also a lot of speculation around the draft combine as well this past week that the Canadiens were talking to Mike Matheson about a potential contract extension. I know it seems to be a bit of a lightning rod for Canadiens fans, but it does sound like there's interest on both sides to do a contract and extend him. But we'll see about that. I'm not sure how talks went on that front, but there was a lot of speculation around that. And Jonathan Toews, of course, we know is very, very interested in making a comeback. It's sounding more and more likely that he does have I guess until it's done, it's not done. But it sounds like the odds are more favorable than not that he could end up with his hometown Winnipeg Jets. So, like I said, we know he's going to have interest from a variety of teams because of his level of experience. Obviously, some risk involved. Hasn't played in 2 years, so you wonder what kind of player he's going to be when he comes back. But I suspect he's probably going to sign pretty cheap because obviously he understands there's risk involved, but it's sure sounding like there's a good possibility that he could be going home to Winnipeg. So we'll see what happens with that as well. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.